we see these divorces that devolve and that get really nasty and drag on for years. And divorce is the #1 killer of wealth in the United States. What's going on, everyone? This is Mark Real Jr., the Fathers Rights Attorney. I'm the founder and CEO of Real Fathers Rights, and you are watching another episode of the Fathers Rights Playbook. And on today's episode, I know we typically cover multiple topics. We react to multiple videos, multiple news stories, but just last Tuesday, we had a piece of news in the divorce realm break that kind of covers the broad spectrum. And so rather than having one of our attorneys to talk through the J-Lo and Ben Affleck divorce, we have Scotty here, who runs our social media at the firm, has the pulse on pop culture, everything that's going on the internet, and we're going to take some time and talk through the issues that have popped up or will be popping up in the Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck divorce. Scotty, how are we doing today?
Oh man, I feel good. I'm with the big dog today, man.
Yeah. So we this is definitely more of a pop culture episode. There's going to be a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
But we're kind of going to take this episode as allow you to ask questions as I explain what's going on in this divorce publicly, and then what is going on behind the scenes. Because to our viewers, I want to make abundantly clear, I have not even pulled the divorce filing. It did happen in Los Angeles. So it's a divorce that filed in Los Angeles County, but I have not seen the divorce filing. I have no inside information. So there's going to be some speculation here. So this is from a press release. So last Tuesday, Jennifer Lopez, 55, filed for divorce from Ben Affleck, 52, in Los Angeles Superior Court. According to the court filing obtained by USA Today, Tuesday marked the second anniversary of the estranged couple's Georgia wedding ceremony. TMZ and Variety report their date of separation as April 26th. So last Tuesday, Jennifer Lopez filed for divorce from Ben Affleck. For those counting, based on the press release, this was the second marriage for Affleck, the fourth marriage for J-Lo.
Crazy.
So 6 marriages between the two. And I think we've talked on this podcast ad nauseum about the statistics.
Yeah.
Where first marriages, 50% divorce rate. Second marriages, it goes up to a little over 60. Mm-hmm. And I've only seen statistics for the third marriage. Mm-hmm. Goes up to about 80%. So J-Lo is in uncharted territories.
I have a question, because you mentioned it. Your key words were they're going about this the common man way or something along those lines. What does that mean? Like what's the common way to be divorced versus the non?
Jennifer Lopez is not represented by an attorney per her court filing. So in my head, Jennifer Lopez walked into Stanley Moss Courthouse and filed her own divorce. Now, probably was done online. Yeah. We can talk a little bit about what's actually probably occurring, but neither party is represented in this matter. So on her divorce filing, according to these reports, it just lists Jennifer Lopez in pro per, which is self-representing in this divorce.
That's insane. Does that make it cleaner, you feel like?
So we can hop right into this. So realistically, number one is, and we can talk about this in a second, there is no pre or post nup in this marriage, which is another shocking kind of development. J-Lo's previous marriages had prenups. Word on the street was her and A-Rod had already agreed on a prenup before their breakup. Very, very common for wealthy individuals, male and female,
for sure,
to demand a prenup. In this case, there was no prenup, and we'll get into reasons why there may not have been a prenup. But realistically, behind the scenes, my speculation would be one of a couple of things is occurring. Mm-hmm. Number one is that they've already enlisted a private judge to help them with their matter. So a lot of times, higher-end divorces, we saw this with Kim and Kanye. We saw this with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, where they actually go to a private judge, which is usually a retired judge. There's services throughout the country. There's a couple here in Southern California where a private judge will preside over your matter. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that do? That keeps everything out of the public eye, because everything that is filed with the courts everything that is on the court record is public information.
Got it.
So there's probably a strong likelihood that the two have already enlisted a private judge, or potentially, given kind of their lot in life, engaged with a mediator or engaged a private judge as a mediator to help them distribute everything and separate from each other.
Got it.
So although J-Lo is on paper self-represented, we haven't seen Ben respond yet. The direction this is going to go is really going to depend on how Ben responds.
Gotcha.
Now, if Ben responds, or maybe just simply doesn't respond if they have an agreement in place, then it could go smoothly.
Do you think he responds? Do you think he will?
So I think that the most we are going to get from Ben Affleck is just a form response.
Got it.
That agrees with everything that Jennifer Lopez put in her filing. So one of the things that tips me off on that is we have an April 26th date of separation. So we're talking about we have May, June, July, August. So we're 4+ months since the couple separated.
Got it.
So have they taken this 4 months to figure out exactly how this separation is going to occur? That would be my guess. The other thing is maybe they have been quarreling behind the scenes, and he could file and come out guns blazing, and maybe she's made more money than him. It's tough to tell in the entertainment industry with movies and albums and everything. Income varies dramatically year to year depending on, hey, if you had two blockbuster movies released, maybe you had a $50, $70, $100 million year where maybe your project got pushed and you made a nominal amount of money in the year.
Right.
So there's some uniqueness with the finances. I don't anticipate Ben Affleck's public persona, at least, seems to be pretty chill.
He's laid back, yeah.
I think the pictures everyone thinks about are him smoking a cigarette on the sidewalk, taking a deep breath. So given the time that's passed, given the fact that J-Lo filed without an attorney, which there could be multiple reasons. A lot of times representing someone like that can be a career maker. So having gone through the process before, maybe they said, hey, we're not going to make anyone's career. We want you to do what's right. We don't want you to. So in the public, I'm going to be unrepresented. Because realistically, both have a team of attorneys
for sure
behind them.
For sure. There's no way they don't.
Yeah, they both have personal attorneys. They have both been through this process before. But this is usually one of those cases, if you think about from a legal perspective, that lends itself to being low conflict. So they were married for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Less than 2 years date of separation. So it's a short-term marriage. Both of them have kids, but not from this relationship.
Yeah.
Both of them were, by any measure, extremely wealthy, probably in no different financial position than when they entered into the marriage.
Yeah.
And they both own homes. They both have property. They both have significant wealth. So it's not a couple who got married and bought a home together and that's their only asset. It's not a couple who everything needs to be split up. There's a very real possibility that the reason there's not a prenup is that all of their properties are held in trust. With their children as beneficiaries. Yeah. So there could have that could have been the reason as to why that there's no prenup is because both of them have their financial affairs, their estate plan in place, and so there may be minimal property to divide up. It really may just be the income they earned during the marriage, which was a short-term marriage.
Is that income that they earned during the marriage? That's I hear Ryan talk about it. Is it commingled? Is that what that is? And that's why.
So California is one of 9 states, which is what's called a community property state.
Okay.
And what a community property state means is that all income and assets and debts acquired during the marriage are considered community property.
Got you.
The term we use, the legal term, is the marital economic community.
Okay.
Fancy word for saying like anything from date of marriage until date of separation, anything in between, unless there's a prenup or a postnup that says otherwise, is considered joint community property that must be distributed equally upon divorce or separation.
Got it.
So any money. Let's just say, and I'm not the pop culture guy. Ben has a movie. I know J-Lo's had a couple movies who haven't done so well. So J-Lo has a movie that comes out and she makes $10 million on that movie.
Yeah.
And she earned that $10 million during their marriage. That is technically community property. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we see this with the common people, or the common man. I don't want to say common people. The average divorce case where, let's just say, one parent, typically we see the mom, is a stay-at-home parent. And the dad goes, and the dad is earning $100,000 a year.
Right.
Well, under the law, when you separate, it doesn't matter who went to the workplace. It doesn't matter who has the job. It doesn't matter that you guys bought a house based on his income, and his income solely paid for the house and the mortgage payments and the furniture and everything in it. If it happened during the marriage, or it was earned during the marriage, it is community property.
That's insane.
That's typically why with high earners, and even individuals who are not high earners, should get a prenup in place. Because if you have a prenup in place and you are that high earning spouse, you are the one who earns an extreme amount of money, you have the ability to set the rules for how that income is divided if you guys were to get divorced.
It's crazy because growing up, like, a prenup was kind of, or, I wasn't knowledgeable about that, but they made it seem like a prenup was like such a bad thing. Like, if you got a prenup with your wife or whatever, like, you were just a bad guy.
So here's the deal. Everyone has a prenup. Okay. You have a prenup.
Regardless.
Irregardless. It is the California community property rules that dictate how your assets are divided.
Got it.
So you already have something in place, but you and your partner have the ability to create your own rules. And for high earners, like I'll use, for example, one of them, Michael Jordan. He did not have a prenup with his first wife. She is wealthy now. With his second wife, she is earning, if they were to get divorced, it's something like $1 million per year they were married. Okay. Once they got to like the 10th year. So she's going to get an 8-figure payout.
Yeah.
If they were to get divorced. But what it does for that, whether you're a high earner, whether you make $70,000 a year, it creates certainty on the back end.
Got it.
So you are going in and creating your own rules.
Got it.
So you know, basically you get to create the rules the game is played by before you have to play the game. Or you can just play by the rules the state lays out. Which, I don't know about you, but I would rather create my own rules than play by whatever the state of California decides in that moment.
For sure. So back to the divorce. What's been the thing for you that stuck out the most about the divorce, if anything?
So I think the first thing is that there have been these tabloid rumors for 6 or 8 months now about them getting divorced.
Right. I've seen that.
So that there have been these rumors, there have been these grumblings about what's going on, and they're getting divorced and they're doing these things. And neither of them commented publicly.
Right.
Until this filing occurred. So, like I said, that's either going to go one or two ways. Either J-Lo didn't want it to get ugly and Ben wasn't willing to play ball, or there's a good possibility they have everything figured out.
Yeah.
Because all they're really dividing up, and both of them could just be walking away saying, I don't want anything, I don't need anything. But all they're talking about without a prenup is basically the income earned or the assets acquired during marriage.
Got it.
That's realistically probably all they're talking about in their divorce, because there's no kids. Both of them were already established. Both of them are going to have had their own properties, have had their own things, their own toys, all that stuff.
Got it.
So I think that's probably the thing. Is my gut is both of them have kids. Both of them have kids that are teenagers. So I would be inclined to think that they don't want their kids to see them go through an ugly divorce with someone they probably developed a relationship with.
For sure.
So, I mean, he's been around for over 2 years. So there's they both have been around each other's kids. They both have been around each other's families. So my hope in all of this would be is they've actually come to an agreement. We're not going to see anything. I would not be surprised if the next thing we publicly see is a judgment that lays out very basic terms in a very vague way.
Yeah.
And they've exchanged their property disclosures. They've had a private judge or a mediator help them out with any conflict there may be. And then we just see this like boilerplate template judgment that doesn't tell us any information.
So, I mean, I'm very much assuming, I believe that this is going to be a very smooth process for them because obviously they got money. I'm sure they're just walking away, right? How does a common man set himself up to exit cleanly like that, right? Because, at this level, or my level, it can get pretty nasty. Yeah. So how could I set myself up to where I could just, exit cleanly?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing,
if possible, I don't even know.
Yeah, sometimes it's not possible. It takes two to tango.
That sucks.
If one side, like I said, there's a very real possibility that one or both of them is not playing ball with the other one to make this quick and clean.
Yeah.
That's a very real possibility. Now, you can go in with the best intentions. I always tell guys it's like, number one is identify the couple of things that actually matter to you.
Okay.
So a lot of times what makes things messy, kids in custody.
Yep.
So if we identify that's number one, we need to make sure that we get that and we're willing to trade or negotiate anything else away.
And is this before we even enter a divorce process, or like as I'm getting ready?
As you enter it, I think that number one is, I would tell, no matter your income level, is getting a prenup in place. A prenup can essentially cover everything with exception of custody and child support. So it can lay out what spousal support would look like. It can lay out how property will be divided. Cool. So having that understanding. And I found actually in having these conversations with people is the couples who come together and discuss these things are the ones that are more likely to stay together anyway.
For sure.
Because they're able to have a civil conversation. Now, how does the common man set himself up? Okay, so you get a prenup. If you don't have a prenup, you have the ability to get a postnup. Gets a little hairier, a little tougher conversation at that point. Like you're already married. Yeah. Hey, I need you to sign this document. That can be a little bit tougher conversation. And I think once you get into the process, is negotiating or having conversations when both of you are in a calm place is the biggest key. Because a lot of times where we see these divorces that devolve and that get really nasty and drag on for years, and divorce is the number one killer of wealth in the United States. Where we see it get is there's no conversation about what's going to happen, what could happen, what should happen, until both sides are at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And when both sides are at each other's throats, well, neither side's going to back down. You can't get punked by the other side when you're at each other.
It's fact,
you can't do that.
Yeah, it's war. No one wants to lose.
Yeah, so once that fight has started, and you want to get that negotiation, you want to have those conversations while cooler heads are still a part of it. If not, you want to do everything in your power early to de-escalate the situation so you can have those calm situations. Now, I mean, the secret side of divorce, or what's not talked about a lot, is that about 90% of our cases end in settlement.
Okay.
So
that's real fathers?
Yeah, real fathers' rights. Cool. 90% of our cases, eventually, it is a negotiated settlement.
Okay.
Now, does that mean that it's not after we've had 7 requests for order and we've been in front of the judge 10 times, and then the judge has kind of laid out where this is going, and they've made decisions on all the points that the parties can't agree on? Maybe. But there are also a good number of divorces that they never appear in a courtroom. Dope. One party files, the other party files a form response. We exchange disclosures, and then we enter a judgment in, completely agreed upon. Yeah. So, I mean, it does happen. We hear about the nasty 10-day trial over domestic violence.
And those are always loud, right?
Yeah, those are the loud ones. But a lot of people, usually after 1 or 2 court appearances, we can get a good idea, especially if you take kids out of it. Within a couple of court appearances, it can be figured out, like where things are going. The judges made rulings, and we're able to get to an agreement.
Got it.
So, I mean, the nasty ones are either, number one, people being unreasonable. At the end of the day, community property, we talked about it a little earlier, is a math equation.
Yeah.
So there can be arguments about the math equation, but it's usually they're not as nasty and protracted. They can be. They are significantly more expensive than custody once you get other professionals and everything involved. But if both sides are reasonable, both sides are honest, they don't try to be deceptive, those can usually be resolved. The other one that's usually a big point of contention, and something that's interesting in this case, is one of the most common trials is a trial over date of separation.
Okay, break that down.
Date of separation. So when you file your petition, you put a date that the two of you separated.
Gotcha.
And separation can mean a couple different things. Like it can be something as simple, it can be something as clear as on this day, he or she moved out of the house, we no longer resided together. It could be that you ceased sexual relations. It can be that you started sleeping in another bedroom. It can be
sleeping in another bedroom counts.
Yeah, in theory, a lot of our cases where like the man will say like, hey, I started June 1st, I started sleeping in the extra bedroom. But that can be a big deal because we talked about community property and that marital economic community. Well, it ends not at divorce, but date of separation.
Wow.
So
okay.
So here's the thing is, where could J-Lo and Ben's stuff get hairy?
Yeah.
Did J-Lo file and put that date of separation for a very specific reason? Did she get a $15 million check on May 1st?
Yeah.
So, or the day after. I've seen things as crazy as the date of separation gets put the day before they bought a house or the day before they bought some toy.
Okay.
To try to keep it where that is not part of the marital economic community.
Now, hypothetically, right? None of this is facts. Let's say she did get a $15 million check, and that's what her strategy was. How does the attorney or the courts go in and kind of say, hey, no, you can't do that? Or can she just do that?
Yeah, well, she can do that. You can say anything in your petition.
Yeah.
But what we would see then is in Ben's response, Ben's going to put a different date. And that date of separation is going to become contested. Now, the parties can negotiate. They can agree to keep her date of separation, but she gives him $5 million of that.
How toxic is it that I kind of want him to respond?
Yeah, I don't see a response in this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's going to make news. It's going to be all over the internet.
For
People
sure.
are going to talk about it. But I think realistically, you're just going to get a form response. And like I said, if I was a betting man, I'd say you're going to get a form response, and then you're going to get a judgment that just has very basic, vague terms in it, and they're going to have everything agreed on outside of the public eye. Now, like I said, date of separation, or maybe he's being vindictive. Like you're going to know pretty quickly in this response, like when he comes out guns blazing. I don't see it. It makes a lot of logical sense that they've been living separately, allegedly, according to the filing.
Right.
They've known they're separated. They've quietly worked things out. They know exactly how things are going to go. It's already happened.
Yeah.
And someone has to file with the court. You can't just go to the private judge and get a divorce. You're going to need to file with the court. So, like I said, you could legitimately see technically Ben doesn't even have to respond. If they've agreed on everything, they could just submit a default judgment.
Yeah.
She could submit a default judgment and it be over.
Got it. So the only reason we even know this happens because she had to file with the court.
Yeah.
Basically.
So you can't get divorced. Some states, some rules are different. California, until recently, cases involving kids, divorces with kids, or parentage cases, just child custody cases, were actually sealed cases. So the public did not have access to them. Now, anything that's filed in family court, with exception of a few things, that is accessible to the general public. So this is the tabloids, the news, whatever. They got a hold of these documents. Now, whether that's, I think a lot of these places, they have certain names that get ran every day or on a weekly basis, or they're checking these databases for things. I mean, like I said, this has been a 4, 6, 8-month thing where there's been rumors of the two of them getting divorced. So these gossip magazines, these beat writers have definitely been checking on this, because I haven't seen any photos of it, so I don't think J-Lo walked into Stanley Mosque and handed her petition in. I think it was probably electronically done. It was probably done by an attorney.
Yep.
But like I said, everything in this case points to this is going to be a bunch of news about nothing newsworthy.
All right. Just taking up our time.
Yeah, just taking our time. But like I said, it does raise a bunch of interesting issues. You see, like Jennifer Lopez, who is, by all accounts, I probably should have looked up her net worth before we hopped on the pod here.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked if you told me she had a 9-figure net worth, and I wouldn't
For
be
sure.
shocked if Ben Affleck had a 9-figure net worth. And to have that individual file for divorce in pro per, and there being no prenup in place.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that's realistically how 95% of divorces occur.
Yeah.
Is one of the parties on their own walks in the courthouse, files for divorce. There's no prenup. There's no nothing in place.
J-Lo's 400 million. Affleck is 150 million.
Okay. All right,
Affleck, go get that check, man.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
go
okay.
get
So
that
we have
check.
you said 400. J-Lo's worth 400 million and Affleck's worth 50 million.
100.
150 million.
Oh,
Okay,
man.
so we have $550 million worth of net worth. Now, I want to say this is J-Lo's been active in it. Both of them have been active in their careers since the 90s.
Yeah.
So, although she's worth 400 million, if 350 of it, because let's just be honest, her shit's tanked the last couple years.
Yeah.
If 350, 375, $395 million of that net worth was acquired prior to marriage, it would be completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
To this divorce. So, I mean, you have two extremely high net worth individuals. I think it's probably a lesson that the average person should take is that the vast majority of these celebrity divorces are very quiet.
Yeah.
For every Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, they went to a private judge, and then it got booted out of there, and they actually had hearings in Stanley Mosque Courthouse. Now, neither of them personally appeared at Stanley Mosque, but there were public hearings involving the Kim and Kanye divorce in Stanley Mosque.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then Brad and Angelina, that's a decade-long feud that's been going back and
insane.
forth. The private judge made an order. It was an order in favor of Brad Pitt. And then Angelina appealed and brought it back into the state court system. But outside of those, like, very rarely do you hear about long, drawn-out, nasty divorces. There's a lot of prenups. Like, I always use the example of, like, did you ever hear anything about Bill Gates got divorced in the last couple of years? Jeff Bezos got divorced in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
You never heard a word about either of those divorces.
Yeah.
They obviously have teams of attorneys. They say, here's the rule. Here's probably what's going to happen. Both sides have good counsel. Both sides understand that, is it really worth it to fight? Like, I had lunch last week with an attorney, and he's wrapping up a case where it is two very, very educated MBAs from well-known, well-off business schools. And
Those are the clients?
yeah, the
Okay,
clients.
okay.
So one of them was like Harvard, the other was like Yale.
Oh, shoot.
And they had spent on a divorce with no kids, with basically property that very easily split down the middle. They ended up fighting over what amounted to less than $30,000.
Wow.
And it cost both of them, in total, they were over $600,000 in attorney's fees.
Wow.
So they spent $600,000 to fight over $30,000.
That's all ego.
It made no sense. I mean, it killed what could have been generational wealth for both of them.
That's insane.
To fight over that. That's the biggest mistake people make. I understand sometimes it's custody, and you can't really avoid that. But what do you learn from this divorce? What do you learn from these other wealthy people in divorce? Is they avoid conflict, they don't spend money on unnecessary things, and their whole goal in the process is to get through this chapter of their life as quickly as possible, and on to the next one as smoothly and successfully as they can.
Yeah, 100%.
So, all right, I think that's all we got on the J-Lo and Ben Affleck divorce right now.
Yeah.
Scotty, thank you for hopping in today and providing those questions. To our listeners and our viewers, thank you for watching or listening to another episode of the Fathers Rights Playbook. We'll be back again next week with another episode.